Welcome to the Synapse podcast. We're here to talk about Florida's growing innovation community. I'm Lauren Prager. With me today in the virtual recording studio are two longtime Florida innovation leaders and Synapse community leaders as well. Happy to have you back in the studio, both of you, Brian Kornfeld and Danielle Mousseau. So welcome back, you guys.
Thank you for having us, Lauren.
It's happy to be back. I'm on a podcast kick, so I'm excited to be on one again. That was my first one the last time, so yeah.
Synapse was your very first one, I remember, a couple of years back. So good. We're going to get a chance to kind of get an update on where you've been, what's been going on with the Florida ecosystem as you've been traveling all around the state, and in particular, your work here with Synapse. So I just wanted to set a little bit of context for what we want to talk about today, because we're in a really important pivotal transition moment, not just for Synapse, but really for the entire innovation community. It's a very exciting time. Innovators have this mantra, innovate or die. And it's a matter of absolute life and death for any organization or business or really individual to take moments of reflection and be able to grow and evolve and change. But in order to get to know where you're going, you have to really understand where you've been. And the journey within Florida's innovation ecosystem over the last 7+ years has been one of exponential growth and truly dynamic opportunity, ones that we saw coming and some that just snuck up on us. And that sets a lot of the context and stage for some of the statistical growth that we've seen and some of the community involvement that has really transformed what's happening within Florida innovation truly from coast to coast. Consistently, we're seeing Florida communities and the state as a whole being recognized as an incredible place for innovation through media outlets like Forbes, Inc. magazine, and many others that are recognizing our cities and communities as places where you can come to build and grow and scale your businesses. Since 2017, over 450,000 new businesses have started in Florida, making it one of the fastest growing states for startups all across the United States. And in 2022 alone, Florida startups attracted over $3.5 billion in venture capital funding, according to our friends at Florida Venture Forum. And that is just a reflection of the growth, the opportunity, and the talent that's right here in the Sunshine State. So as we're looking at this incredible growth, all of these new businesses that are growing and scaling and building here, it's helpful to understand, again, where we started in order to understand where we're going. So, Brian, I want to start with you. I want to ask you a little bit about your Synapse story and the story that brought Synapse into creation, because it reflects what the innovation community looked like back in 2016 and 2017.
Yeah, I mean, going back 2016 and 2017, it was a very, very, very different time in the state of Florida. And I was working a full-time job. I had a side hustle company, and I was looking into why the side hustle company had plateaued and not taken off. And one of the things that I looked at was, is it the state? Would I be doing much better if I just picked up and moved my family to California, or picked up and moved my family to Chicago or New York and said, this is the place where innovators are. This is the place where people are looking for software and looking for high tech. And if I plop myself right in the middle of it, then all of a sudden it's going to change everything. And all of a sudden I realized I wasn't the only one looking at this question. And I had met other people who are also asking the same questions of why is it so hard? Why can't we find the resources that we're looking for? Why is it that I'm having conversations with people and they're saying, wow, I wish I would have met you 6 months ago because I could have used you back then. And instead I've now offshored, or I'm doing something completely different. And and I would say something along the lines of, well, we were at the same event. We talk to the same people. We have mutual friends. Nobody's thinking about introducing us. And there was it was flat. There was no energy. There was no reason to go anywhere. There was no reason to talk to people. And the mantra of people really was not in the, how can I help you? Or how can I contribute? It was, what can you do for me? And this was something that was very evident that really needed to be looked at in a way that was not just, let's do something fun. it needed to be systematic, and it needed to be something that was very intentional to be able to build and grow together as an entire state. And so as we started talking over the course of 2016 and 2017, putting a framework in place and learning from community builders around the world and learning from research studies and learning, here are the specific problems for the state, and here's what we could do to help to contribute to the reasons why it's hard to find certain resources, why we're so spread out, why it's so disjointed. And if we could be very intentional about this, then possibilities would just become endless for the state of Florida. And I think over the course of the last 7, 8 years now, and I can't believe I'm saying 8 years because it really was summer of 2016 and spring of 2016 when some of these meetings started, that it really has been transformational of the state and has brought a whole new energy to Florida.
Danielle, you've also been a part of the Florida innovation ecosystem for a really long time. And I'd love your reflections also as you've been coming at it from a different perspective, different part of the state, different experiences, really focused on the drivers of economic development. So take us back to that time when you were getting your arms around what's going on in Florida and set a bit of the stage from your experiences. And if you would kind of share a bit of your own foundational journey that got you into that role also.
Absolutely. Well, for me, I'm a Florida native, so I'm not a transplant. I was born and raised in Florida. So for me, this is my home state. So there's nothing more important than growing the economy of Florida. And I have a personal story related to just growing jobs, right? We think about innovation and tech, but ultimately that results in innovations that help people, whether that's in the jobs or in the communities that we live and work. So for me, that's kind of a driving force of why I believe so strongly in economic development. And with that, Florida has continued to grow. We've had times of great tourism and times of maybe less tourism. But I think in the last, really since the pandemic, we've been growing at great rates. And that's really been helpful for Florida. And we've really capitalized on it. I can't say that every state kind of flourished one way or the other in the pandemic. That was a very difficult time for many of us and still for many people. But for Florida, I think with the attractiveness that it had for bringing folks to live here, that it really kind of created this mystique around moving to Florida. And then with that, we've become now the 15th largest economy in the world. That's an actual fact that cannot be reckoned with. So if you're a business person, that's a large economy to do business with. But newcomers, coming from all over, I think they're really starting to see what Floridians have known all along, is that we have a very business friendly climate. We're the number 2 state for business in the United States. We have number 1 for talent attraction. We have all of these number 1s, number 2s, top 3s. But as Brian said, just because you have those facts, if you're not interconnected, it doesn't mean anything, right? You might have all of the great tools to make this wonderful meal, but maybe you only make an appetizer and you don't make the dessert, is kind of how I think about it. So what I have kind of seen is there's different parts of the state that have flourished individually and have always had done a good job of building community. But what I have seen come together since Synapse and really the rise of post-pandemic is organizations starting to collaborate or say, hey, we have all these great assets and these great people, but they're not talking to each other. So as someone who's traveled around the state, I can kind of echo what Brian was saying is I go to these events and say, well, you need this person has it. Or, oh, do you know Lauren from Synapse? Because she actually knows this person. So I think for me, we have all the ingredients. We've been making some great kind of appetizers, but let's make the full entree. Let's pair the food together and make the state, even better for startups.
I love that analogy. That speaks to me. I want to take a moment to talk through an innovation ecosystem. That's a term that gets thrown around, and you could make a game out of how often in a conversation like this people use the term innovation ecosystem, but it means something. And I think it's worthwhile because the way that Synapse architected our definition of an ecosystem was very intentional and based on a lot of study done in industry. And Brian, you alluded to our reviews of innovation communities all across the world. So, let's take a moment and figure out who is essential to be working together within the innovation ecosystem as we at Synapse have articulated that. What's that architecture look like? The foundation for an innovation ecosystem that we need in order to thrive.
I mean, there's a number of different ways that this question can be answered, and we could break it down to the bare minimum. We could go all in with everybody. An ecosystem is just that entire universe, and the entire universe of who is involved, who should be involved, which is wider. And then there's people who aren't going to be a part of the innovation ecosystem no matter what. And part of setting up ecosystem, and I often use the term community very intentionally, is to make sure it's welcoming, especially for the people who should be involved and they don't know they should be involved, and that they can get it ingrained. And if we look at the different personas of it, a lot of people think innovation, they think tech, so they think the software developers, they think the entrepreneurs, they'll think the investors. And yes, those are a major, major part of an innovation ecosystem. However, the large companies really need to be a part. And they need to be playing a major part of an innovation ecosystem. And they also need to remember at some point or another, they were not a large company. They might have started with 1, 2, maybe 3, 4, 5 people, and they needed these resources to be able to get from a couple of people, a handful of people, all the way to thousands of employees. I mean, if you look at, say, and I'm going to throw out just one company, a ReliaQuest, for an example, they started with just 2 brothers, and now they have a bowl game, a New Year's Day, or I think it's going to be New Year's Eve this coming year, bowl game named after them, because they have been able to build and grow so much based on the resources that have been present in the area.
So for those who don't know, ReliaQuest is a Tampa-based cybersecurity company that now has international presence, and was homegrown here.
And that's just one example out of hundreds in the state of Florida. But they can't just say, I want to take. It's also, how do they contribute? How do they help earlier stage companies build and grow and incubate and maybe be an early adopter of some of their technology? Or how do they intermingle with the university system and the research going on at the university system and the talent coming on with the university system? How do they go about hiring the talent, which is a big part? And then how does all of this work together in a way where it's not always, again, like I said earlier, of what can you do for me? It's what can I do for you? How can I help you? It's always one of the most important questions to ask. It is, what can I do to help you? Not what can we do for each other. It's what can I do to help you? And understanding that getting something in return may come from that person or from that group. It may not come from that person or that group. It may come from somebody else completely out of left field. And a good example that I have just from this year's Synapse Summit, I was actually talking with a gentleman who was a part of an investment firm, Eric Aronson. He works with Mark Cuban companies. And he had asked, and I'd asked if there's anything I could do to help him. And he had asked if there was any companies that we could look at, that he could look at. So I actually introduced him. There was 2 founders, arm's length, and I introduced them. And I don't know if anything came from that. And then Eric said, oh yeah, what are you working on, by the way? I'd love to hear about it a little more. And immediately when I finished, I have to introduce you to this company that's part of our portfolio. And we've struck up a partnership with that company over the course of a couple of months. And so now those are the ways that this mutual beneficial relationships can work with each other. Neither of us asked, say, what can you do for me? It was always just, hey, here's how I can help you.
Yeah, give first. You talked a lot about the important role of corporations, and sometimes Florida isn't really thought of a global corporate headquarters, but we have many, and some are incredibly engaged in supporting the local innovation communities for all of the reasons that you articulated. But I don't remember, or I cannot think of one that is more invested in supporting not just the innovation community, but also the startup community quite in the same way as Florida Power and Light. And Danielle, the creation of the 35 Mules Innovation Hub, even the story and why it's called 35 Mules, talk about humble beginnings for what's now become part of a global leader in energy, next era energy based on the Atlantic coast of Florida, has been really remarkable. That sort of rising tide lifting all boats, and how we can help others first is really part of the ethos of the 35 Mules Tech Hub. And I'd love for you to share your experiences as the leader of this hub, now in the middle of hosting your 3rd cohort, and the way that your organization is thinking about economic impact beyond just those areas that can directly impact the company. You're really thinking bigger.
Yeah, so thanks, Lauren, and really proud for Florida Power and Light to be a part of Next Era Energy. So we're a Fortune 200 company for those listening, based in Juno Beach, Florida. But we're the largest subsidiary or electric company in Florida for the subsidiary that I work for. But we're really a part of this larger international company here. But with 35 Mules is really we started our name 35 Mules Innovation Hub is a nod to our beginning. So when Brian was talking about two brothers, we really started out with 35 Mules, and usually I jokingly make the comment, if you don't believe me, look at the historical photo behind me. So we do have a photo of how Florida Power and Light started out as an ice company delivering ice to its customers to cool back in a day that was cooling for homes and for places. And we used a sponge fishing boat and approximately 35 mules to do it. I've always wanted to brew an innovation ale, and I make a lot of workhorse jokes, but it is really a nod to our, and one joke I can't make on here with a word that would probably get bleeped out, but really we're really, it's a nod to our humble beginnings as a company. We didn't start out as this large energy conglomerate company, that was serving all these customers. We were really, a humble company that started with one building in Miami, and there's historical photos of delivering ice. And then really it fast forward to still another beginning of us focusing on economic development. So growing in the state of Florida, we are now one of the largest, energy company in Florida, serving, more than 60% of the state. We are very closely tied to the economic success of Florida, and we realized we needed to make an active contribution to helping the economy of Florida, not just the energy economy, not just, climate tech, but really making sure that businesses succeed, that we have a stake in helping them do so. So we started an economic development program and a team, and set up a way to help businesses there with an economic development rate and a team that supported recruiting and retaining businesses in the state of Florida to create jobs and better the communities where we live and work. And then 35 Mules came out later as a sort of an early stage economic development play for the state. It's like, well, it's great that you're helping these companies that are already thriving and competing. How do we grow them here from the beginning? And I use, Monique always tells me on my team, use your sports analogy. And it's, well, if you got LeBron James out of high school and got him to college to stay at UF or UM, and then he stayed and played for one of our Florida teams, it would cost a lot less to keep the business and grow it here with the talent, making sure that the talent is here. So I think Florida has great talent, and connecting the dots will help keep some of our greatest innovators here and attract the ones to stay here for the long term. And that's really what we're about.
And I think one of the important points that I've experienced in working with you, your team, and many others is that you really do have to look at this as the rising tide that lifts all ships, which has become a bit of a cliche in the innovation community, so to speak. But Brian, you alluded to the mentality shift of needing to just give first. And when you approach things that way, you see new opportunities grow, and it does have an exponential impact in many ways that you can't anticipate. And being able to bring lots of different personas, those people who drive innovation together, is key. When we talk about innovation at Synapse, there are two kind of big concepts that I think are really important to emphasize. One is that not all tech is innovative, and not all innovation is tech. And a lot of times in these conversations, we end up focusing really deeply on startups and investors, and they're absolutely essential. But the second concept we talk about at Synapse a lot are the different players that are important to making sure that we have a thriving and successful innovation community. And you alluded to those, Brian, but I want to make sure we put a finer point on it, because to really understand where Florida has opportunity to grow and each of our individual ecosystems can grow, think it's worth thinking about who those personas are and where we as listeners fit into those different baskets and where we can help enhance those connections. Yes, startup entrepreneurs, founders are key. Investors are key. And what's fascinating about the investment community in Florida is the growth of many new investment groups, venture groups that have become really cohesive, really focused on opportunity to support Florida-based founders. But as our population has grown, we've got even more people who are kind of investment curious coming in. They may have resources and want to learn how to deploy them to support investment in startup opportunities. And we can bring them more into this market, into this community, and educate them. We have fabulous universities, state universities, private universities, technical colleges, community colleges, and growing. And as the notoriety of those institutions grow, the opportunities for innovation and technology transfer to both new companies and existing companies. Again, opportunities are endless if we're able and willing to connect to them. And that's an enormously important resource within our academic institutions. Danielle, you alluded to really business-friendly government practices. Our involvement with our policymakers at the local and regional and state level has been important to making sure Florida is a great place to do business. And the statistics don't lie. That's why people are coming here. That's why businesses are thriving here. And really important to make sure that they're part of the conversation for everything that we do. We talk a lot about talent, and most people think talent and they think college students, and that's 100% true. But again, we've got this influx of talent coming here from all over. There's hardly a week that goes by where Synapse isn't fielding a phone call, a text message, an email, a message on our website from somebody who says, hey, I'm new to Florida. This is what I did. I sold my company. I was involved in XYZ experience, and now I'm looking for my next opportunity. Where should I connect? And that's an important way to think about talent all across the state of Florida. And so when you think about those personas all together, then you add in entrepreneur support organizations, incubators, accelerators, tech hubs, again, popping up all over. A few of them are corporate supported, like 35 Mules, but a lot of them are independent, nonprofit, membership-based organizations or entities that have a particular thesis around a region or an industry or an opportunity. We have an abundance of resources here. So that's kind of the architecture that Synapse looks at and how we think about the innovation community really broadly. It's not just startups and it's not just tech. It really is an inclusive and cohesive community. So that's the foundation. And we had all those ingredients, like you were saying, back in 2016, 2017, 2018. We just needed a way, we needed a head chef in the kitchen to put it all together. So that's kind of where Synapse stepped in. So, you know, Brian, when we started this organization, there were these opportunities and challenges, and Synapse was homegrown in Tampa Bay, but quickly was invited to expand across the state into different regions. So will you share from your experience as the founding CEO, one of the 3 co-founders of the organization, what spurred that growth, how we brought together some of the players that I just outlined and the challenges that we were working to address in those early years?
And a lot of this really did have to do with connectivity. And I go back to one of the best talks I heard about this was by Brad Feld, who was one of the founders of Techstars. And he talked a lot about how these ecosystems are all these communities around the world. Anywhere you go, there's always stuff. It doesn't matter what the stuff is. There's going to be something there. There's some type of stuff that's there. You can go middle of nowhere and there's still something that's there. The strong and the thriving communities have the ones with the strong connections between the stuff. And that was really, again, what was lacking. And some people were trying, but it was just not ever being done in an effective way. And so we really wanted to look at what are some different angles that could really do this effectively. One of the angles that we looked at was a web platform. And the web platform is something that if I look back, it was one of the biggest challenges, probably because when we first built it, I'll honestly say we didn't do a good job with it. And I'll be the first person to admit we could have done so much better if we would have kept things so much simpler and answered 2 questions of what do you need and what do you have to share? And those are things that are really, really simple in a push and pull type mentality of how can you find something that you're looking for very, very rapidly and digitally, especially in this digital world where people are looking for instant gratification at their fingertips all the time. If you can't find something within seconds, it's gone. The moment is over and it's completely lost. We looked at corporate innovation challenges, and those we had vast success with. And that was a great way to have the larger companies find talent, find opportunities, find innovations to incubate and to move forward with. And last, it was the in-person activations and really bringing people together in meaningful ways, whether it was small around a round table with like-minded people who behind closed doors that could just have a really open and honest conversation. And that's a really hard thing to do because in a lot of times in a lot of places, people feel like they're being judged. People feel like, oh, I might say something, but it's a bad idea. And there's this fear mentality. But to have smaller groups where you check all your judgments and you check your ego at the door, and to be able to say that's how progress really gets made. Because people will say something and it might be the most crazy idea that's out there, but the crazy ideas sometimes are the ones that are the best ones. Or all the way up to the large scale in-person events, Synapse Orlando, partnerships with different events around the state, whether it was in Gainesville or in Pensacola, Tallahassee, South Florida, really tip to tip the entire state, Pensacola to Miami. We were there. And then and the Synapse Summit was the place where everybody would come together. And that was designed very, very intentionally. It was designed so people would be under one roof and in one big tent. And so that way, the natural collisions that don't take place on a day-to-day basis in Florida could start to really take place, whether it was at a breakout session where you would have smaller groups, or at a table, or just walking in hallways. And if you think about Florida, we don't really have central downtowns. Even Miami, downtown Orlando, downtown Tampa, they're not central downtowns that a majority of the population walk around like, say, a New York City. It's a big urban sprawl, which is spread out in huge masses that take forever to get from point A to point B, with a massive lack of public transportation. So we needed to get everybody under one roof to avoid that spread. So this way you have those events of intentional serendipity, which I know is a complete oxymoron, but it was set up to be that way. So this way it would be like, oh yeah, I haven't seen you in a while, let's catch up. That's on purpose. That's not by accident, not on accident. Lauren will smack me if I say on accident. That was not by accident. It was very much on purpose to be able to really get people together. And the success stories that have been seen from every single one of these types of activations has really been life-changing. And that's what this is about at the end of the day. Because if we can do this and we can help to change those lives, it also helps to change the trajectory of the greater overall community, which is the state of Florida, which I'm very proud to have left an impact like that, because I'm also a native of Florida. And to be able to say we're on a right path to be a high-tech, high-innovation state, and a high-innovation contributor to the world, it is something that's very, very meaningful and very different from where we were 8 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and especially now with a lot of academic study about the importance of interpersonal connectivity. And there's not a tech leader, CEO, expert, CTO that we've spoken with who hasn't said the most important component of their business or the future of tech is the people. So the opportunities to actually come together and engage in human to human, face to face as best as we can, and scale serendipity, which is what Synapse helps to do, is absolutely critical. Danielle, we got together, I think it was in 2020, that Synapse and FPL first got to working together. And shortly thereafter, you jumped in, taking over 35 Mules and really stewarding this relationship. And now you're an active leader on the Synapse board of directors. You've been a part of our organization. You are the inaugural recipient of our Community Innovation Leader Award at Synapse Summit 2024, because we recognize that not only are you involved actively with Synapse, but with many, many organizations statewide, because you fundamentally believe in the value of these initiatives and this type of connectivity effort. And you've shared with me some of those transformative stories that you personally and the organization have experienced simply because you engaged and you showed up. You really showed up and were really present in opportunities that you've seen throughout the state. And it's a great reminder that sometimes it's as easy as that. And I'd love for you to share some of the impact you felt from being a part of these experiences, because I think sometimes it feels really scary and complicated and like you have to do a lot in order for you to have an impact. But you can really make a difference with a lot of intentionality. So would you share a little bit about your own experiences?
Absolutely. I was thinking about something Brian said about, it takes a lot of courage to lead, right? There's a lot of people, a lot of places have the right ingredients, but it takes courage to lead. And I always think of Synapse, you had the courage to lead and start these kind of connectivity of bringing all the people together. And for me, my first Synapse Summit or my first Florida Venture Forum, but I'll speak since I'm on, speaking with Synapse, that particular summit, it's like the Super Bowl of bringing everyone in Florida together, right? It had all the players. And from someone who does travel around the state, it was very convenient and wonderful to go to an event and say, wow, if I want to meet this person, they're here. Or I could ask the Synapse team for, hey, I'm really, this is a challenge that one of my startups in my program have, or they're looking to meet this person. That opportunity was there. The state of Florida was there. So for me, it was just amazing to see not only just getting people there, but they were wanting to showcase themselves. I just talked to another partner of ours. I won't name their name, but we were talking about Synapse, and they're like, that was a huge event for us because we got to showcase, our program to other people. So not only is it a place where the 35 Mules founders get to connect with other people, I actually met one of our founders that is in our third cohort. I met him at a Synapse event, and I ended up showing him the photo he did not remember, and I did. I said, hey, we actually met here, a year and a half ago. So I think, for me, the ROI is, as a recruitment tool, clearly that works. Somehow miraculously that founder made it through our very rigorous application process of reviewing. But, it's really, I've made some great connections, and I feel like it's a community that anyone that goes to that event is willing to say how they could help. And I think that's really important. But the courage to lead, I think, is something that's important. We can talk about rising tide, raising all ships, but if you're in the harbor, you're not even in the tide, right? So I think there's still some people kind of waiting in the harbor. And I think Synapse has chosen to lead and do things that were different. I think that Florida Power and Light, people ask me, well, what is 35 Mules? I don't really get what you're doing. Why does FPL do that, right? But we're having the courage to lead and to say, we believe in helping growing businesses at the earliest stage in all aspects for the state of Florida. We try to spread out, the organizations that we support, and really, we can't do it all ourselves. And that's why we support organizations like Synapse and the economic impact that you all have made on the state of Florida. And I'm on the Florida Venture Forum and Grow Florida. We support and try to support organizations from Pensacola to Miami because there are awesome resources for businesses, founders, startups, venture, grants all over the state. And we want to give them a platform because we know that if everyone is the courage to lead or to ask how they can help, you really will bring everyone together. And then we'll bring more people here and we'll just keep growing and growing into the, hopefully world domination. I'm just kidding. I had to make it a little funny at the end. But I was really proud of the work that is really, I see a lot of more collaboration. And I think Synapse was a huge part of bringing people together. I was able to bring people from Pensacola. They traveled. It's very difficult. I think you mentioned, Brian, to get across Florida. That's one of our biggest challenge to connectivity. Yes, we have Zoom and all of these things, but human connection is hard in Florida. We're a logistically challenged state. So my goal is to try to help bring and help people understand what is maybe potentially a useful resource for them or a great event that they should go to, or maybe we can help them get to that event on our tickets. And I think anytime we've done that and brought people from other parts of the state to meet other people, and we talked about like-minded people, but I think it's the diverse minds coming together that really brings the most innovation to the state. And I think that's what I'm hoping for the future, is that there's also some diversity of mindset by continuing to bring that together.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. And again, speaks to our approach because we are a nonprofit, because we are industry agnostic, and we've worked across communities, geographies, technologies. It's a unique opportunity to bring people together in lots of different ways. Most people know Synapse because we do host this gigantic event and several thousand people come. And it's hard to believe that we've hosted one every year since 2018, including a virtual multi-day gathering in the midst of COVID. But it's also, as Brian mentioned, the things that Synapse has been able to accomplish a lot of times below the radar screen. A lot of it is these individual introductions and connections, the innovation challenges, sort of like a mini hackathon but over a longer period of time. The most recent one of which enabled new ideas to address cancer care for patients living in rural communities. And the winner of that challenge is now working with Tampa General Hospital and their Cancer Institute as the state of Florida has grown and populations have grown outside of our urban centers. So being able to attract ideas, not just from Florida, but we had international applicants. Nearly 100 from all over. And the reward was this opportunity to truly make an impact. Those are some of the ways that Synapse has influenced and created those ripple effects all throughout the ecosystem. So it's hard to believe that in just a few years, we've hosted well over a dozen large scale events. We've hosted dozens more smaller scale events. We've estimated that more than 50,000 people have come to all of those events over the years, and an exponential number more who have been impacted in the ripple effects of those. We're really excited to be embarking on a strategic impact report process to actually measure the economic impact of those experiences. Because as I said, that we get constantly conversations, just like Brian, you mentioned, of a successful partnership that came about. And sometimes we don't even know that those experiences happen, those little synaptic moments, those connections between two opportunities and two ideas that happened as a result of a Synapse sparked relationship. New contracts signed, new opportunities, new investments, new businesses. We've even heard of relationships that started as a result of people getting to know each other through Synapse. And what's been really a cool part of the experience that we inadvertently created is that we've created the space for these really deep human connections that are based on the premise that together we can make our communities, our societies, our world a better place. And we attract the people who have that fundamental goal, and the ancillary benefits that they may get for their work, their business, their investment portfolios are bonus. But being able to be around people who are like-minded in that they want to make an impact and will challenge and inspire you is a very, very special part of the Synapse community that we've created, both within the events that we've hosted and really all throughout the year. And that's been very, very rewarding for me and many members of the team and volunteer army that has led this organization over the last 8+ years to where we are today. So that's been very, very cool. I want to take a moment and reflect on where Florida is going and where Synapse is going, because as I started the conversation, innovators need to innovate. It is in our DNA. It's okay to fail. We fail and we learn from those failures. It's okay to succeed, but you can't stay static. You have to find ways to continue to grow and grow and grow, and make sure that growth chart meets that hockey stick inflection point. So, as you're traveling around, Danielle, I'd love for you to share what you're seeing about the growth of the state and the opportunities that we should all be thinking about, as there are new industries, new technologies, even more cohesive communities, and you've really got a unique vantage point. So where do you see growth opportunities for the state as a whole?
I mean, I think for Florida, really there's, Florida just got designated a climate tech hub, which is interesting. And I know we talked beforehand, 35 Mules does not just support climate tech companies, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that we are the largest energy company in the world. But it is very exciting, I think, for South Florida to have that special designation from the Economic Development Authority. That means there's potentially more funding for innovative technologies in that area. But as you mentioned, Lauren, this isn't just for Florida companies. So that's cool that Florida's getting recognized, I guess, what I'm saying, in many different ways by different industries. I think the Space Coast is continuing to just grow in a very prolific way. So, and space isn't just space anymore. So space is clean fuels. It is so many other things. So I think the way we think about industry, it's AI is across every industry now. Almost energy now is across every industry in some way or another. So it's really how you view them. I think the Northwest Florida is a brilliant and has so much innovation with cyber and tech and some of the military community there. And it kind of doesn't get overlooked, but I think we forget about all the assets that are there. So that's one of my passions, is really kind of connecting that community with the rest of the state. And then I think, Tampa, Orlando, and Miami have always just been huge players for startups. And I've seen a lot more progress of everybody working together. I know Plug and Play, I think, just launched in Orlando. And I kind of think of each of these reasons, if we're going to keep on the food topic, maybe I'm hungry, but farm to table, right? You've got to kind of grow with the ingredients that you have in your community. And I think that's the direction that I see is, you're not going to boil the ocean. We talk about connectivity. everyone can't connect to everything or be everywhere, right? And I've certainly tried. Anyone who follows me on LinkedIn, I try to be everywhere. I've learned that's physically impossible. So what you do is you say, okay, what resources do I have here? What can I make with these, these seasonal ingredients here? And then really it's about, if there's going to be a big family dinner certain times of the year, maybe don't schedule your family dinner, for your family on top of the greater, family get together. That's kind of how I would say it. But I've been really proud to see that there's all of these different communities, I believe, are thriving and sort of kind of known for different industries. And I'm really, really, really excited to see how each area kind of really grows their own individual community while keeping and making sure they're sharing that growth with other people so that their resources are able to be accessed by everybody.
Yeah, you're so right. It's very cool to see that within the state, there are so many pockets of growth and opportunity, and they're interdisciplinary, which only lends to our strengths. Some people think it might be a weakness. I think it's the opposite. I think when we can have areas of strength and then create opportunities to work together, learn together, grow together, then that's collaboration, not just and healthy competition is good, but you need that. And so, I encourage people to look at those different areas, whether it's the military bases. We've got 22 military bases here in Florida. We've got the Space Coast. We've got incredible technology there, fintech, healthcare. Now we've got the semiconductor corridor,
yep.
Climate. There's so much happening.
I mean, health tech
boom. Yes.
Yeah.
So some people say, well, what's Florida known for besides tourism, which is great. We do innovation in tourism unlike anybody else almost in the world. So, but what else is Florida known for? Well, we're known for a lot of things, but it's the interdisciplinary approach to how we work together. That's Florida's superpower.
And I think that there's one thing I'll add is that some of these industries are a little further along than others, but those industries require support services. They're getting venture, they're getting, maybe it's private equity or larger investments or these later rounds or grant funding. So I think that other disciplines or other industries can learn and access the resources that one group has attracted. They can be leveraged across all disciplines. So I think that that's the one thing that I see that maybe is missing. It's like, well, Florida might just be known for, name it XYZ. And it's like, well, that those support services that are growing that industry can also support your industry. So maybe you can tap into that. So it's really, the supply chain and, HR tech, and there's things that every industry needs for support. And I think that if one area is a little bit ahead of another, it actually just creates more resources for Florida in general. So that's why I think when one area wins, we can all win.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. We have a lot of opportunity and talent here in our communities that we just need to look for and take advantage of. But that's still a challenge. So Brian, I'd love for you to share more of where you see opportunity and need from the organizational side. That's the opportunity from the statewide side. But we're talking about where Synapse is going, what the needs and opportunities are, and maybe you can share a little bit about the process that we're undertaking now to really innovate for the organization to be focused on our number one value, which has always been community first.
That's right. We could just say that together. I'm sure we could rattle off all the values at the same time. Not that I've been in as much practice, but Synapse really is innovating. And we would be almost hypocritical if we just wanted to do the same thing over and over again. And we encouraged people to innovate without looking internally and saying, what is it different? What are the needs? What are the problems now that we're going through? So right now, Synapse as an organization is truly measuring the impact of what's happened in the past, is truly going through and diving in to figure out the more specific problems. 7-8 years ago, the connectivity was a big issue, even on smaller levels within the major markets. And now the question is it between markets? Is it still a problem within markets? Where within the markets? What are the needs and what resources are truly, truly needed? It's a whole different world now. I know, Danielle, you mentioned AI and how AI revolves around everything. What does an AI-enabled future look like? And how are we setting up for something like that? Because a lot of people are afraid, oh, well, the robots are coming to take our jobs. And that's not the case in any way, shape, or form. It's how do we leverage that to make sure that people are doing the right jobs and the right things for the future? So what educational components are there as well? And really interviewing people and understanding from interdisciplinary and cross persona to understand all the different places of when the question is asked, how can I help? So we can actually be able to answer that question meaningfully, not just answer it with whatever we feel like is the hot button topic of the day, but truly meaningfully to help to propel to the next level. So that way, when we're having this conversation in, call it 2032, which seems like very, very far away, but it's 8 years away. And thinking back from 2016, 8 years in the past, I know we're all rolling our eyes here because for many reasons. When we're having this conversation in 2032, we expect Florida to look completely different again. And we really want to be a part of that leadership of this. So understanding what it is to be done, understanding what are those in-person activations that need to happen. What does a future of a quote unquote Synapse Summit look like? Probably not the same as it's looked in the past because the needs aren't the same as in the past. But still, who needs to be under that tent to get that activation for the course of the year? What can be done on a digital front? What can be done simply, easily? What type of marketing efforts should be done within the state or outside of the state as well to ensure that people are being attracted to the state for innovation? And also when people do move here, because we still have 1,000+ people moving to the state every single day, including highly talented individuals or people who are post-exit or near exit, and they're trying to come to the state probably for some of the business-friendly laws, but potentially also they should be a part of what's going on in the state and getting them engaged. And how do we ensure that we not just get them engaged to show up to an event, but how are they meaningfully engaged and truly a part of this community going forward? So these are the types of questions that we are currently not just asking, but getting answered with pending results coming over the course of these next couple of weeks. And this way, we can lay out that blueprint of what does Synapse look like beyond 2024? What does it look like in 2025, 2026? I won't say 2032 because honestly, we don't know. But maybe for these next 3 to 4 years, what does it look like? And how does Synapse best lead this community to provide the most value to it and to really help everybody work together for the future of the state of Florida?
Perfect. That's exactly where we're going. We're so proud. And actually, both of you have your own Synapse success stories. You know, Brian, with your new company, Max, you created with someone you met and got to know and work with through your involvement and leadership at Synapse, Dan Greco. Danielle, your involvement with 35 Mules. And as you shared the stories of interconnectivity, being able to introduce so many of the experts from Florida Power and Light into the innovation community and really be a leader of that corporate innovation spirit in ways that we haven't seen before, which has been amazing. So I love that you're here to share your Synapse success stories and what's worked for you as individuals and for your companies so that you're able to help Synapse continue to do its work, inspire another generation of innovators and innovation leaders to continue that connectivity, those opportunities, and to build those relationships that will help to prove, as we like to say, that innovation lives here. For those of you who are still listening, we will add a link on our website where you can contact us. We'd love to hear your ideas, your thoughts, your needs. How can Synapse be able to help you and your organization succeed as you continue to grow? We love the feedback that we already get and keep it coming because this is the time where you'll see more opportunities to make an impact on the future of this organization and the future of innovation in Florida. So until next time, keep on innovating. Thanks, Brian and Danielle. Great to chat with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.